I am the only one who doesn't have the merit of not being here because I don't have any illness, right? But there was a bit of this question, which is, why do I come here? Why do I come here to talk? And I remember that in 98, when I was still a journalist, I did an article for the major report on cancer in one of the largest hospitals in the country. And I followed 12 people for 6 months. And so if someone did that for me and gave me their testimony, I also have in some way to pass on that testimony. Rita would never be here in this place. Rita was kind of discreet leader who would stay in the back watching, maybe delighted that I was here speaking, but she would never do that. But she did other things. She, for example, never told me when she was leaving here, man, because she liked to walk to prove to herself that she could. Or, for example, when one day she had half a lung removed, the next day she went home and visited a friend who had surgery on her bunions and was very, very unwell. Therefore, there wasn't complacent leniency. There was always a brutal struggle of, we're going to be able to do things. Regardless, we knew that the lifespan she would have was going to be 5 years. And we managed to mess with the statistics. We had 6.5 years. And so for 6.5 years, we fought. Now, I'll just give you an idea. We had 2 children, and there were boring days. There were days when a person would wake up in the morning and say, why me? And when it was on one of those days that she turned a teaser for Professor Luis Costa, that she arrived at the hospital and said, who is studying our case? Who will give me an answer? Why will my children be without a mother? Every night she engaged with them and said, I'm giving them self-esteem because they will need it. But no one answered her as to why me. Who is doing something for us? And her revolt against that situation and that the permanent revolt somehow kept us fighting. And we would have wheelchair races to the hospital, joked with everyone in the elevator. Between treatments, we would sunbathe and lie on the grass of the hospital or in the garden in front, or wherever there was a tree, or whatever it was. Or even we used to escape to go have lunch running. Sometimes we would go by motorcycle to feel like we still had that energy, and that's it. Now there are questions we have to ask, and these questions are the most important. That is, when a person gets sick, they must feel total trust in the institutions that are caring for them. We have a lot of the idea that we need to have second opinion consultations, third opinion, etc., etc. Rita, we lived in Africa, came on vacation and stayed here. We had lived for 8 years in Africa. Rita worked at that country related to other countries with development, and therefore in some way she had a mission. And when she came here, we came on vacation and ended up staying. There was this feeling, how can this be conveyed? And how can I do something? And she always did things for others until she felt a moment when she couldn't do anything for others. You know, that is meaning she was part of groups of people with chronic illnesses, etc., until she felt she could no longer give anything. Now, there is something from our experience that we can pass on, and I think that is the most important. These second and third opinion consultations often worked. Why? Because the waiting lists in institutions are often very long, and a person knowing that suddenly they have a nodule, but not being sure if the next diagnosis will take 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months on the waiting list to do. We had health insurance that allowed us that. And some friends and some prince doctors and a family of doctors, because attention, Rita's father is a doctor. I am a doctor, everyone was a doctor. And it allowed us to slip away and try to find out. And maybe that same afternoon, we were already undergoing that diagnostic method. And the question many times, okay, whether it suggested in us a therapeutic obstinacy or not. In other words, despite knowing that Rita was going to die, despite both of us being aware of that, it's funny, we always lay on each side of the bed and didn't touch each other. That's how the whole marriage was until the diagnosis. And we started holding hands and sleeping holding hands. But we knew this would happen, but we fought. And so the search... Now, there was a situation that happened to us that was quite serious in a certain institution. For example, an MRI showed that Rita had metastases. And that changed things radically, the whole process and her entire future. And we only realized this during a second opinion consultation 6 months after this diagnosis was made, and this report was done because no one had read it. That generates some concern in us, which is we don't trust this doctor, or we'll have to have more doctors. And this creates some therapeutic obstinacy. When we suddenly the institution doesn't tell us whether we can or not, we end up waiting 3 months to know if we are going to do an X-ray of the lungs, if we are going to do chemotherapy, or if we are having surgery. Maybe we will knock on doors and look for a surgeon to operate on us. And maybe that surgeon doesn't integrate the whole process. They will think something very simple, which is, I will cure this, without knowing the whole picture. And so maybe we have different therapeutic obstinations, different situations that are caused by initiatives. And many times Rita would ask, aren't we too obstinate? Shouldn't we go slower? And so maybe this could have been avoided. I always said no, but that was my role. I also had to say no, and also had to say no, let's move forward and give that reassurance, because this is always a two-player game and it's necessary to have that game. But maybe in some of those situations, if there were serenity and if the institutions could convey and the doctors could convey that serenity, maybe it would have been different. At the end of our journey, we realized that no, we have nothing more to ask anyone. It's going to be like this. And that was the most important thing for us, because the wounds on the body were already quite significant. And so perhaps we needed that serenity. That's how it is. But that confidence in a doctor being able to convey that confidence, I think is fundamental. And that is not possible with health systems where appointments must take 15 days, where we don't know how long we will have a diagnostic method that we need to know. Or when we know that, for example, a medication costs so much. I am a political analyst on a television channel, and the other day I was analyzing our country's future budget, which we've been discussing for a long time, and no one talks about a medication every 3 weeks costing 40,000 euros.
Poor Enzo.
480,000 euros. And perhaps this is what causes our National Health Service to have these costs, maybe going to private care. We can't have these medications because our health insurance doesn't cover them. We have dramas, and all these issues make us have doubts and generate insecurities for us. And those insecurities
many times
take away our quality of life. That issue of the quality of life of a patient after their diagnosis, that insecurity takes away a lot of that quality of life, and it's very important for us to think about it. Another issue we also have is the word cancer, the weight of the word cancer. For those who have 2 little kids, like we did, in 2016, the kids were very small, and we have, the mother has cancer. And what happened at school was a friend saying, my grandmother died of cancer, my uncle died of cancer, my mother lost her hair from cancer, and everything was a scenario. And so one of the things we established among ourselves without needing to discuss it, it happened naturally, is that from 2016 onwards, the word cancer disappeared from our home. There was no cancer, there were illnesses. Mom is short of breath, very tired today. Mom is going to have lung surgery. Mom is undergoing treatments. Mom's platelets are low, or mom will be without hair for a while, but it will grow back. Okay, and there was none of that, let's shave the hair off at home now. No, I didn't do what I did. Each one had an understanding of themselves and their circumstances. There was no need to make a big deal or endorse the idea that we're all in a fight and all whatever. And that's also excessive. No, live with serenity, a certain serenity. And when Rita died, that day we went to the beach, and the kids walked the dog. I picked them up from school. They went into the sea with the dog, played around, and in the end they said, "Dad, amen." I said, "Mom died, but she died of COVID." They thought Mom had died of COVID. And then it was necessary to say no. After all, there was a disease, it was cancer. And it was always here. We didn't tell you because we thought it might be a scare. But the truth is they were very well prepared for that illness. They were very well prepared for that outcome, even though it was never discussed. Why? Because there was that calmness. And it's very important for us to be able to convey,
All the
and for the
Portuguese
clinical
people.
professionals to convey that calmness. In other words, continuing with the wheelchair in the hospital, continuing to joke with the security guard in front of us, and being able to share all those experiences. Of course, some things change. At the end of this, I would look here at the stands, searching for her gaze, trying to get some kind of approval, and she'll never be there again. And if I went to the Olympic Games at the end of my event and had won the gold medal, I always know she won't be there. But on the other hand, I know that my children are extremely loud. And for example, they gained
With this
human
experience.
dimensions of experience that other children do not have. That is to say, not even badly.
Right.
We all gain in this process. What healthcare professionals also need to understand is that this process is not just one of loss. It is a process in which you gain. You gain a lot. And that is very, very important. And perhaps that was the message I would most like to convey.
Well, let's do it.
If I can summarize well, I realize that first, I think on the part of the patients, I think the issue of the emotional relationship with cancer, before and after, needs to be studied more. We agree with that. We can turn this into a scientific project that explains how a profound emotional change can or cannot lead to changes. I usually use the word host, the woman, to facilitate a certain type of susceptibility for the appearance of cancer, but it has to be studied. It's not easy. It's not easy for one to deduce, but it has to be studied. There you go. Second, I think the issue of communication seems to be very, very, very important. It provides security, better quality of life, and truth. I hesitated, to invite Duarte to be here at this table.
Bye.
But I got here because I think I owe something to say to all the patients, which is that not all of them are in the same circumstance. Some are probably cured. Others are not cured. At this moment, it may even happen that in 1 year, 6 months, there might be a treatment that can solve the situation. They all deserve our attention. And our respect, obviously, but our attention and dedication. Therefore, this means that within what we are capable of doing, we must do our best. As doctors, as scientists, as representatives of influencers.
That's it.
9 is 9 for me. They're there. They're embedded near these concepts for me.
Thank
I
you.
think it's important. We all have to understand that. And there are different, and today I'm going to confess something to Raquel here, which she doesn't know, which is the founder. Raquel knows Rita's story because it was during a conversation at night with him that we started thinking about this matter. But when it was time for the program, I asked him, so Luis, what are you going to talk about? And I told him, I'm going to talk about breast cancer this advanced day, which is not an easy topic, obviously. And I'm going to try my best this afternoon. But, because someone has to talk about it. And someone has to say what we have achieved so far and what we hope to achieve more in the future. And there are very beautiful things that happen. Some of them I will try to convey in the afternoon. But it is always, obviously, a losing battle. Anyway, we are here as a foundation and as doctors to try to help everyone, regardless of the circumstance.
Just to say one thing, when I talk about therapeutic obstinacy, it is not bad and can bring us some good things. In our case, for example, we knew there was a medication that would do Rita good, and in her advanced state was the last solution. But at the hospital where Rita was, it was no longer given. And so it was great because as a result, we met Professor Luis Costa and changed hospitals, and we gained some peace of mind that we didn't have before. In other words, the problem is not the obstinacy, it's the feeling that we are not getting answers. And therefore, what we have to try to do is provide those answers. The second question regarding this, and just to finish, and what's somewhat amusing is that life with the illness became a little more repugnant and often brought great response about all this.
Thank you.
I think there's one side of this that is amusing, which is what remains afterward. But there's also another side, which is not everyone sends us a message 6 months later saying, I haven't forgotten you.
Let's go then. Let's continue. We still have 10 minutes. Do you want to say anything before moving to Marta Flores's testimony?
It's very
The
nice.
testimony here is very important, but we also have to take into account human diversity. And no, sometimes there is a tendency to generalize. The doctor is one thing. I am not a doctor, so I am perfectly at ease to defend this position here, which is the doctor is a huge diversity of patients. Some want to know, others do not want to know, because at the league we receive from the same patient people saying wonderful things and others saying they did not tell me everything. Therefore, this flexibility to please everyone is very difficult, and we also have to put ourselves on the other side to achieve the best possible harmony, which is great for it to be harmonious. Exactly. It is good that this journey, and I completely agree, is as harmonious and calm as possible. And all health professionals have an important role, but we also can't just ask. On the other side, there are also human beings, and there has to be, they are not superheroes. Sometimes we want an answer. But does this answer exist? This answer will be what we want to hear in that state. And sometimes we just want an answer and to hear what we want. And sometimes it's also important to say this, sorry, Professor, but I think it was important from experience.
Just from my
Yes,
videos, I
That
only
we
called drug.
have with patients who really want to hear things, and they will hear these things everywhere and even seek various opinions until the doctor understands what is at stake. And sometimes it helps and says, right?
Marta, of course that is.
It goes against what they were saying. I think it has a lot to do with
For trust.
trusting the process, trusting medicine, trusting ourselves that we will be able to overcome the moment we're in. But above all, trusting at that specific moment in our doctor, in our team. And that is a task that comes from us, who sometimes do not have the capability to trust, especially in such a fragile moment of a big shock. But I think our doctor, our team, has a decisive and very important role in conveying that sense of security that Eduardo spoke about. And for me, that comes from trust. From the moment I feel that my doctor passes to me the reality of what is happening, the probabilities, the possibilities, what is being said. There are also patients who do not want to know. There are. I know that. But I was one of those who wanted to know everything. And having doctors who have that ability, that flexibility to adapt to their patients is not easy. They are superheroes. They are. Indeed, they are. But it seems to me that it is fundamental for how the patient will also integrate this moment into their life.
I just wanted to add, I am completely aligned with Sofia once again, because I truly believe that the most important thing of all is, regardless of whether we want more information or less information, each person is an individual. And for each person, there is a doctor. And therefore, doctors are human, just like the person going through this. There are doctors who are more emotional, warmer. There are doctors who are more pragmatic. There are doctors who are colder. But there are also people who prefer doctors of each kind. And therefore, my advice is really to find the doctor you trust, because that doctor exists. And until we feel that trust, it means we haven't found our doctor. We really have to find a person to whom we entrust our life, because in practice, that's what we're doing, entrusting our life into someone's hands. And therefore, what matters above all is for us to complete the process, regardless of how painful or light it is. Feeling that is I was in the right place and everything that could be done was done. And Duarte, from what I understood, felt that when he met the professor, regardless of the story not ending as he had envisioned, but well, we know that stories don't always end in the best way. But there is a path, and that path must be with the right person. This applies to doctors, applies to friends, applies to family, applies to life, where the path must be made with our people and with people who speak the same language as we do.
Thank you. So I think if you agreed, it gives Marta Flores the opportunity to give her testimony. Is that okay?
So I add up